I've been doing a commentary through the book of Job, and I have worked my way up to chapter 1, verse 6. And what I'd like to do in this video is chapter 1, 6 to 12. Reading the Hebrew, translating it into English, followed by some brief grammar, and then commentary, going pretty much verse by verse through it. So what we come to now is the accusation of Satan. And in verses 6 to 12, this is the final scene, the first scene in heaven. It appears in which Satan gives his false accusation against Job. Satan impugns Job's motives for serving God. God in turn then permits Satan to afflict Job's possessions, but not to touch Job, in order to vindicate his servant. So we begin then in verse 6. And I read it in Hebrew. Vayehi hayom vayavo'u b'nei ha'elohim lahit yatsev al Adonai. Vayavo gam hasatan betocham. That is, it came to pass upon a day, literally hayom, but we could translate in the day and understood, that the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and the Satan came in their midst. As we look at this verse, the angels, the sons of God, as the scene opens, refer to angels reporting to God in his heavenly court. The angels present themselves before the Lord, in my understanding of this book, to tell what they've been doing, their ministry in the universe. It's interesting, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 14 talks about how the angels in their ministry minister to us, to believers. And so I'm thinking that the B'nai HaElohim are referring then to the angels. And they come before the Lord, and the Lord, Yahweh, is the self-existing God who is always faithful to his promises. So the angels then are presenting themselves before him as their sovereign. And notice as we look at verse 6, the Hebrew lahit yatsev is from yatsab, to stand before. It is a hitpael infinitive construct. And I think the idea is that they are standing before the Lord to be examined by him. And and the Satan, the Hebrew says, ha-satan, is in their midst. There's a lot of discussion about who the Satan is. Let me just share the different viewpoints and share honestly where I'm, in my understanding, where I'm coming from. Jewish interpreters as a whole understand the Satan here, the Satan, as the bad thought, the Yetzer Hara. There are two thoughts in Jewish interpretation: Yetzer HaTov, the good thought, and Yetzer Hara, the bad thought. It's interesting, even going back to Genesis 3. The serpent is often spoken of as the Yetzer Ra, or the bad thought that everyone struggles with. And not only the Jewish interpreters follow this, but there are scholars, critical scholars, who take the Satan to be like a prosecuting attorney, part of God's angels whose job was to prosecute. However, uh, it's my own understanding, and we'll look at that in a minute, that we're talking about the Satan as he's developed not only in the Hebrew Bible, but in the New Testament. Let me just read one other point here. Uh, Rashi, who is a medieval Jewish commentator, this is on page 2 of the commentary on Job in the Sonsino series. Rashi is quoted as the interpreter who understands the adversary has returned from touring the earth to report his findings, the merits and the faults of the human race. And what is interesting here, again, uh, the as we look at some of the other Jewish commentators, the Targum, which is the Aramaic translation of the text, Ibn Ezra, and we mentioned Rashi, also suggests that this was Rosh Hashanah. It fell upon a day, and that is the Jewish religious New Year, when all the children of the world pass before the divine presence. And this is found again on page 2 of the Sonsino commentary on Job. So that's the Jewish perspective. The critical perspective we had alluded to understands the Satan simply as a prosecuting attorney and more as a mythical character in the story, or in the what they would see as more the parable, more of a parabolic book like Job. My own understanding, following the New Testament, is that Satan is a fallen angel who basically opposes God. And Satan in Hebrew means the opposer. And the definite article here could just be defining and identifying that opposer in a definite way. Let me just say, as I look at the Hebrew and the Greek scriptures as one, can I say, development and understanding progressive revelation. In the New Testament, Jesus speaks of Satan as a liar from the beginning in John chapter 5. And in Revelation, he is in chapter 12 called the old serpent. So I think New Testament, can I say, as we see the progressive development of the Satan, is applying all of this to the fallen angel, Satan himself. So in light of that, let me just say a word about this text. The scene opens then with the sons of God reporting to God in his heavenly court. And we talked about how they're going to talk about their ministry in the universe. And Yahweh is having them come before him, standing before him for this. Satan's name means the opponent or the adversary. The Hebrew term here is also found in 2 Chronicles 22:1 and in Zechariah chapter 3 in the Hebrew scriptures. In Zechariah chapter 3, the Satan performs the role as adversary in his accusation against Joshua the high priest. In 2 Chronicles 22:1, he tempts David into sinning against Yahweh. Thus, in these passages, he is seen as an adversary of God's people, seeking to lead them into disobedience to the Lord, as well as an accuser of God's people. Satan is also known in Scripture as the serpent, and we've alluded to this comparing Genesis 3:1 with Revelation 12. He is called the Prince of the World, looking at the development of New Testament in its progressive revelation in John 12:31. He is the God of this evil world in 2 Corinthians 4:4. And the mighty prince of the power of the air, Paul writes in Ephesians 2:2. Appearing on this occasion then with the angels, God questions Satan about his activities. And then in verse 7, we're told, the Lord said, and I'll read verse 7, Vayomer Adonai el ha-Satan, Me'ayin tavo, Vaya'an ha-Satan et Adonai, Vayomar mishut ba'aretz, umit halek ba. Excuse me. Ume hit, I'll get it here. Ume hit halek ba. That is, the Lord said unto the Satan, from where have you come? The Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth and walking around, back and forth on it. Notice here, as the Satan answers, we could render it from patrolling the earth almost. Satan replies that he has been hurrying back and forth across the earth. He does not leave a place uncovered in an effort to find those he can accuse. In the scriptures, we learn that man was given dominion over the earth, but due to his fall, he has lost this. We see in Psalm 8, Ma anosh ki tizkarenu venadam ki tivkadenu. What is man that you remember him? Or the Son of Man that you visit him? And yet you made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor. You placed all things under his feet, and so forth. But in Adam, humankind lost that. And the writer of Hebrews says that in the second Adam, Jesus was made a little lower than the angels and conquered sin and death and cut the way through the thicket of death and is now our Archegon, our pathfinder, who is at the right hand of God the Father. Satan then has usurped this position that from creation that man fell. So the earth, as a result, is under his control. We see this in Matthew 4. Jesus is told by Satan, if you bow down to me, I can give you all the world, in essence. And in John 16, Jesus said, the prince of this world has been judged. Jesus then has regained what has been forfeited in man's fall, and that inheritance, the forfeiture of that inheritance. And we see that again in Hebrews 2, but has not yet, that is, Jesus has not yet taken full possession of this earthly kingdom. I mean, he's over it, he's sovereign, but death still reigns, which came in at the time of the fall. The good news, though, is Christ has conquered death, and someday death will be the last enemy that will be defeated. He must reign until he put death under his feet. So then, as we move on to verse 8, after Satan says, I've come from going forth in the earth and from walking back and forth. Notice verse 8, Vayomer Adonai el Hasatan, Hasamta lebacha al avdi Iyov, ki ein kamohu ba'aretz ish tam v'yashar yerei Elohim v'sar me'ra. The Lord said unto the Satan, have you placed upon your heart or considered concerning my servant Job that there is none like him in the earth, a man perfect in the sense of, we could say, totally upright and straight, one who fears God and who turns from evil. So Satan is summarizing what we learn in the first 5 verses about Job's character. It's interesting. In verse 8, God inquires of Satan about his servant Job. The word noticed or inquired, have you noticed? I guess we could translate this, means have you placed it to your heart? When you look at the Hebrew, it reads, Hasamta lebacha, have you placed it to your heart? And that's another way of saying the heart, like the mind, putting it there, have really considered it seriously, is the thought, I believe, of Job here. Concerning my servant Job, and he goes on to say that there's nothing like him in all the earth, I mean, in his righteousness. So Satan, let me go back, Satan's response to God shows that he had studied Job carefully, as he does with all who are servants of the living God, in order to find their weak spots and to turn them against God. And so as we look at this text, Job is writing, and the Satan says, or God says, have you placed it to your heart? Have you really considered and thought about my servant Job and how righteous he is? And notice Satan's response. This is in verse 9. Vaya'an ha-satan el Adonai vayomer hina yarei oyev. In other words, yarei oyev Elohim. That is, and the Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear you for nothing, for naught? In other words, the question here is that Satan, does Job fear you for nothing? Is really the idea here in a literal reading of the Hebrew. The negative is then implied, that Job only follows God because he has blessed him, is Satan's insinuation here. In other words, he only follows you because you have blessed him. So in verse 10, Satan continues then. Halo ata sakta va'ado uva'ad beito uva'ad kol asher lo misaviv ma'aseyadav berakta umiknehu paratz ba'aretz. That is, translating verse 10, have you not made a hedge about him and about his house and about all which he has. In other words, have not you protected him in every way? You have blessed the work of his hands, literally, the work of his hands you have blessed, and his possessions are increased upon the earth, or he has increased upon the earth. So it's interesting here, the Hebrew, halo at sakta, have you not put a hedge around him? What is interesting here is, as a thorn hedge surrounds a vineyard to protect from animals or human invasion, Satan is asking, has not God so surrounded Job and his possessions with divine protection? It is no wonder he worships you, reasons Satan. You actually pay him to do it. So, with that accusation, we then come to verse 11. Since you blessed him, but if you send your hand and change things, he won't bless you. He won't be one who fears you. So in verse 11 it reads, Ve'ulam shelach na yadacha, ve'ga bechol asher lo, im lo al panecha yevarachecha. But now, put forth, but send forth now your hand, and touch over all which belongs to him. Touch all that he has, and then surely upon to your face he will blaspheme you. In other words, he will blaspheme you to your face if you touch all that he has. It is interesting, Satan charges that if Job loses all of his wealth, he will turn against God. And so you're just giving him things to make him bless you, Satan is saying. So in verse 12, the text continues, Vayomer Adonai el ha-Satan, Hine, chol asher lo beyadecha rak elav al tishlach yadecha, vayetze ha-Satan me'im panei Adonai. That is, and the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all which he has is in your hand. And then he goes on, only unto him do not send forth your hand. In other words, don't touch him. And so we're told that Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. It is interesting here how the Lord says you can do anything you like with his wealth, but don't touch him personally, physically. The Lord then is replying by permitting him to touch everything that belongs to Job, but he could not touch Job himself. God permitted Satan to remove the hedge which Satan accused God of keeping around him. And I just want to say, it is important to observe here that Satan himself has no power against man unless God in his sovereignty should allow it. So I think this is a point that Job is also making. I'm going to stop here and just continue when I have the time to slowly work through reading the Hebrew of Job with an English translation and then brief commentary.